Joel Greene, man, I am so excited to have you here on the Jason Wright Show. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Jason, for having me. And
Well, this is the best part of having a podcast is because you get to read books that are life-changing and then reach out to the author, and occasionally they'll actually say yes and come on and have discussions about them. And The Immunity Code was that book for me, man. I mean, seriously, I cannot wait to dive into this book with you present because it is a remarkable read. So well done, sir.
thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. So a quick warm up. You said you're drinking coffee there. I see you're drinking coffee. What do you put in that? What's in there right now?
Just decaf. Yeah, I actually cannot handle caffeine, but I love the flavor of coffee. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. All right. So there we go. So just kind of a little warm up there. All right. So here's what I want to do, because I think that there's some similarities in our background in that from what I have gleaned from, and I try not to do a ton of research, actually. I take the not to by any means compare myself to Larry King, but I like to come in curious. I mean, my interviews are very conversational and they're very much just my curiosity. I don't think I'm all that unique. I think if I'm wondering something, there's someone else out there in the Jason Wright Show audience wondering the same thing. So give us a little bit of your background and how you became so steeped in health, wellness, peak performance, longevity. Where did this journey start for you?
It really started as a kid. It started with Jack LaLanne, and about 5 years old, and there weren't a lot of channels back then, so
Yep.
I was the little kid getting up every day and just grooving with Jack. But I think one of my biggest influences is probably my mother, because she was really into athletics and very competitive, and she just kind of always encouraged me, athletically. And so, and I was skinny. I was a skinny kid, man. Like I was just, oh gosh, I shot up between sixth grade and the end of eighth grade, like a foot. So I went from like 5'2" to over 6 feet, and I was so skinny. I used to wear long sleeve shirts like continually because I was so embarrassed by my arms.
Wow.
But so I just kind of got caught up in a lot of just whatever was kind of the thing du jour. And the 70s, but I'm ancient, by the way, if we haven't established that. But
You're not that far ahead of me, my brother.
Was a time when you would remember the 70s was kind of like some different fitness. Fitness was not a thing back then. Like most people thought bodybuilders were disgusting.
Right.
They were gross. And running was the first thing I got into. That was after the 72 Olympics. And I just started running. I was running around the block, and I noticed my legs were getting more muscular, and I was like, muscles, what are these? And then, and I was so skinny. I was like fourth grade. I started we had a hammock that I took apart, and it had metal bars, and I would just start doing curls, in the fourth grade, because I was so darn skinny. And then I wanted to get fast, so like I started doing interval sprints like in the fifth grade. Every summer I'd go under the blacktop and I just run sprint after sprint because I wanted to be fast. And then bodybuilding came along, and I saw Pumping Iron, read Arnold biography, would read all the magazines. And I kind of grew up like a Weider acolyte in the 80s, like just reading everything and anything, and like Tom Platz and all these bodybuilder heroes and all this stuff. And so as a result, I just was exposed to a lot of things at an early age, and did a lot of things kind of early on. Interval training and MCTs and what you would call intermittent fasting, and none of these ideas are really new. They've been around a long time. So I just was exposed to them and did them at an early age, relatively speaking, or at an early era. Let's put it that way. And then notable, what really stood out for me was going from not really knowing much at all, and just trying to figure out what happened. Like I would do these things and they would work, and then inevitably there would be something wrong, and I was just trying to figure out what happened. And all that led me kind of in the early 2000s, about 2001. I lost my job. I was working in the .com industry, lost my job, and I started doing websites for fitness models. And At the same time, I published my own website. I was just publishing little research articles that I found on really trying to solve my own problems. Like I'd really gotten into the dark side of fasting in the 90s, and I was eating uncontrollably after about 5 years and really trying to figure out what happened. And I was just publishing articles on things that had come around and led me into what became the defining event of my fitness arc, which was I went from very low body fat, very, very fit, about 2003 to by 2006, incredibly overweight. That was, my experience was real world. I was just running a company and I had these 14-hour days and I had tons of pressure and employees and all this stuff. And all of the info I had downloaded over 3 decades didn't work, just didn't work. And because it was all created in an ecosystem where the main thing you did was work out.
Yep.
And when you took that off the table and really put pressure on your schedule, all that stuff was time dependent and it didn't work. And it left me kind of like at the end of 2005, really like kind of vexed, like, wow, this didn't really work for me. And you couldn't say like I really had, by that time, by 2006, I'd had 30 years of trying everything, doing everything, you name it, throw your acronym at it. I probably had done it. And I just got to this place where I started to really figure out what was really working and what wasn't. And also I saw a lot of, after about 30 years, I saw a lot of people dropping dead, like a lot of the people that were my heroes, one after another, they were dropping dead at a young age. And the ones that weren't, I knew a little bit about behind the scenes just from, making websites and stuff like that for fitness people. A lot of them were on dialysis or on, insulin and just really weren't healthy, And that led me into this period where, just to skip a lot of ground and get right to it, I created a software, and it was 2006. I published an article, 2007, I published an article. It was, that I know of, probably the very first article based on the gut bacteria and the microbiome for the fitness community. It was based on the groundbreaking research of Dr. Jeffrey Gordon, who really was the first scientist to say, hey, there's something here. And that led me down this rabbit hole of biohacking and experimenting with protocols to target the gut. And out of that, I created a software. And then that software was originally, I thought it would just be like a consumer product, but instead, really through no intuition of my own, I was lucky. I had a really good sales guy who figured out that let's go after corporate wellness instead. And so we sold a giant hospital chain. That was our very first customer. And I still can't believe we did it. Like in hindsight, I'm like, we did it. Oh my gosh.
Right.
This giant hospital chain, I shouldn't say giant, it was like five hospitals, but it was big. It was the biggest employer in this county in Pennsylvania. And it was all doctors, all nurses, physiologists that put the protocols to work for us. And it really was very successful, did really well. And that led to these corporate wellness engagements. And those engagements were very large. Like we did one with the city of Phoenix, it was several thousand people. And what's notable about that, in fact, I think I'll post something on my Instagram today about that. What was notable about that was, as I saw people fill the rooms up, and we'd have 500 to 1,000 people at a time in the room, what I saw was reality. Like it was this wake up call. Like I was looking at people that for the most part were, overweight, and fitness was not going to solve their problem. And like a light went off in my head for the first time, like, because I always thought prior to that, like, why don't you just work out? But then a light went off and I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, no, they're not just in the same situation I was, but they don't even have the 30 years prior to kind of help them out. And it just a light went off in my head about what it's going to take to solve the problem of the body that most people face. And it really changed my thinking. And all that led to writing the immunity code. And here we are.
And that's one of the things that what you just said at the end there is what I can so relate to. And it's kind of why I'm doing what I'm doing, is that I look around the landscape, and I don't, like when I see someone at the grocery store filling their cart while riding a cart and they're hanging over the seat, it breaks my heart, because I see that they're trapped inside a prison of their own making. And I think a lot, and I've stopped to think that, one, I don't consider myself so, I don't want to be so self-righteous as to go, you idiot, if you would just do this. Instead, it's like this stuff, it can be complicated. I mean, you and I, we geek out on it, right? Biohacking, and we've kind of figured some pieces to the puzzle out. But the average person is just out there living their life, and they don't know that drinking a full-leaded Coca-Cola is like just shoving poison down their throat. They don't get these things. And one of the things I like most about your approach, I think I sent you either a DM or an email before coming on. I was just in Colorado with my parents, my mom, who is a survivor of a life-threatening stroke 2 years ago. She just turned 70, or she turned 70 rather in 2 days. And my father, who has macular degeneration, so he's blind, so he can't work out like he once did. So it was the first time I'd spent a lot of time with them. And it like that, because we went to see my daughter, who's a student at the University of Colorado. And it just so happened that I was reading through your book. And the cool thing about the immunity code is it's a reference. It's not something you just read through and go, oh, there's my new diet plan, which you do so well. And I came up with so many different sorts of kind of illustrations that I've used for people. Like for me, what this does is it helps you put together the symphony that is your body. When and I use this as a metaphor. I was like, the way Joel teaches the reader to eat is that you don't just have the tuba come blaring in at any time. No, the tuba comes in when it's time for the tuba to have the greatest impact on the piece that's being played. And then the strings come in and the horns, and that's the way. And so the book really helped me. And I thought I was pretty much, this is what I do. I'm into health and wellness. The book really helped me understand how timing is as important as what, and what is as important as when. And then also what you do a fantastic job of, and we will dig into this. I want you, if you would, Joel, to approach this as though the audience, you're teaching a class. And I thought what we would do, I want to take them through, not through the entire book, we'd be here all day, but kind of just an overview of the immunity code, because it's complex. It's simple, but at the same time, there's issues of timing. There's issues of why you're doing these things. And what it helped me realize is I look at food much differently than I did before I read the book. And so I want to take people through that. And then another thing, please don't let me forget this. If I blow through this and I haven't brought it up again, you mentioned being a kid and running and playing sports. One of the things that you have inspired me to do, and the people that follow me on social media and subscribe to my newsletter, they know that I've talked about this quite a bit recently, is sprinting. And not only the longevity impact that it has that you've described, but also fitness can just be, it can take you back to the mental state of being a child. When I'm running through my neighborhood in the mornings on my walk, just in an all-out sprint, I don't have a hit timer going. I'm just freaking going balls out, running my ass off, and it's fun. The endorphins fly and you feel like a little kid. So with that as a setup, knowing more about your background, I want to dig into the immunity code. And so for someone like, for folks like my parents, I kept thinking the whole time that we were together, Dad, don't eat that, or Dad, wait till this, eat some macadamia nuts, and then you can go have that meal. Talk to us about, let's just start through the protocol of someone, they don't know anything. They just picked up the immunity code. I want you to tell people the best way to use this book, because it is like a handbook to, and honestly, and it's kind of like pulling out the owner's manual of your car. There's a lot of good information in there, but if you don't know how to use it, it's kind of pointless. I think this is a book that's important enough that people need to get it, but they also need to know how to properly use it. And I think you do a fine job of chronologically taking the reader through the process, but kind of start out with telling the listener, how do you use this book most effectively?
Well, the first thing to understand is that most of in fact, all, I would say, I would argue, just me, who am I, right? But all of the ideas today that we have about diet, because the reason I bring this up is when a person wants to get healthy, the very first thing they decide they're going to change is their diet. And the reason is the primary way most people get sick is through their diet. Okay, that's how you get sick. So the very first thing most people want to change is diet. But that brings us to a bit of a paradox, which is that when you look at the concept of diet today, it's 10 years ago. Right. It's so outdated, really, when you really, because, and you don't have to think too hard to understand this. If the purpose of diet is to create lasting health, what's the very first thing most people think of when they think of diet?
Not eating.
Yeah, weight, like
right.
body.
Right.
Like they think of body composition and weight. That's kind of what they think of. And that we've been under this sort of misconception that the way that we obtain lasting health is by looking good.
Right.
And looking good is definitely part of the equation. Okay, it's absolutely in the mix, but that's pre-2020. What the new world we're in now is that there's just other things to think about. Yeah. So the very first thing you do in the immunity code is it's diet. It's focused on diet. It begins with it just begins with tuning the gut. It begins with essentially trying to load into your gut the same bacteria that are found in the leanest, healthiest, and longest lived people. Okay, and these are very specific bacteria. And so the immunity code starts by hacking the gut, and two bacteria in particular, Akkermansia mucinopha and bifidobacteria, the family of bifidobacteria. And the reason that we're doing that is not so much for body composition, although you can't really, for most people, like when you deal with real populations, you can't get changes in body composition until you get to the gut. But the reason that you're going after those things is because they are things that you can affect with minimal effort that affect vast, gigantic swaths of health, vast segments of the total spectrum of health. So the bacteria in your gut affect aging, they affect how fast you age, they affect your ability to store fat, drop fat, they affect cognition, they affect all these different things. And so with minimal effort, an average person who works a busy job can create very significant results just by focusing on two bacteria. So that's the very first thing we do. And we use really simple steps to get there. Like we start with apple peels, but there's a number of ways you can do this. Apple peels I use because it was something the average person just could have on hand. Like, you could anybody can get a bag of apples and start with that. Right. And so the idea there is that it's called Enteric Nutrition. And the idea is that certain foods actually don't feed you. They feed the bacteria in your gut. And so the skin of the apple is really feeding the bacteria in your gut. The core of the apple itself is feeding you. Those are calories, but the skin of the apple is not really food for you. And so the very first step is that we're going to load let's call them the superhuman bacteria in the gut, the bacteria that confer health, that help resolve inflammation, that seal and heal the gut, that help to take inflamed body fat and spin down that inflammation, and help to make everything else possible. It's the very first step. The next step is that we're going to improve airflow and hypoxia. And so again, coming at this approach to health, when you look at today, what is the current approach to health? It's, well, you're gonna start eating these macro ratios, and that's, and you're gonna get lean and ripped and all that stuff. That's very effort intensive. It's very time intensive. It's very difficult for most people to sustain that. But what's very simple and massively impactful is to begin to clear hypoxia from the tissues. So what I mean by that is that when you look at cancer and cancer onset, and what you're going to find is very consistently, you're going to see hypoxia. Most people suffer from improper airflow, improper oxygenation nightly when they sleep. And just to varying degrees as we get older, what happens is our airway begins to collapse. The facial structure collapses. We have issues with snoring, with all kinds of issues. It's very, very common. And so one of the most impactful things, like very little effort and massive, massive return, is just to correct airflow. And it's very simple to do. It's very simple to begin to make improvements in airflow, particularly while you sleep. And those have very measurable, very immediate benefits. Like I just met with a coaching client yesterday who had his wife do some of these protocols. And he goes, this is amazing. She's for 20 years woken up 3 times a night to go to the bathroom. And for the first time ever, she didn't get up 3 nights in a row to go to the bathroom. He goes, this is astounding.
Yep.
And so that's one measure. You wake up with improved energy, you're less inflamed. So what we're doing is step by step, we're checking a new set of to-dos, a new set of boxes, and just going down the list and taking things that take very minimal effort and yield very significant results so that you can see and measure, like, man, I just did this one little thing and I see these improvements. That's great. Let me do one more thing. And so really we go down the list and then we attack sleep, we improve sleep, and then we just keep going down. One of the most significant hurdles that we have to get over is the problem of body fat. And the kind of 10 years ago paradigm, which is completely false, is that you get on a diet, you get lean, and then you solve the problem of health. That's the paradigm, okay? Right. Here's what really happens. You get on a diet, you lose some weight, you regain the weight, you try a different diet, you get into chronic weight cycling, you try all these diets, and then at the end of that road, about 20, 30 years in, you can't lose weight at all, and then you have all these health problems.
Yep. Yep.
That's actually what happens. Yep. So we take a different approach to body fat in the immunity code, and we look at it in terms of body fat is a very significant problem. We have to get it down, but there's an unheralded problem. It's called the fat loss paradox, and it is never been talked about, 100% real. And it's the very act of shrinking fat cells sets you up for weight gain, and we have to counter this. Yeah. So we begin to open that door to countering the fat loss paradox. And then finally in the immunity code, it ends up where we come to what's called the 2-day core pattern. You can call it the immunity code diet, essentially. But it's a way to eat that is, let's call it a post-2020 way to eat. Mm-hmm. It's a way to eat that factors in a lot of other things. So we're not just factoring in body composition. We're factoring in aging better. We're factoring in the gut bacteria. We're factoring in what people really do over time, where people tend to just do what they want to do with food over time. We're factoring in lack of time in the schedule. We're factoring in fasting and needing to fast, but not wanting to fast too long, not needing to fast too long. And so it's really just a different way to eat, and it's different parameters. And it's very, very simple, very easy to do. It's just based on when you look at the greatest success with anti-cancer diets, you find that plant-based diets work really well and keto diets work really well. Mm-hmm. And the 2-day core is kind of in a sense, it's a merger of the two, but it has a bonus. The bonus is that new science has shown that you can replicate the same benefits, the same effects of exercise and fasting through different techniques. Mm-hmm. One of those techniques is by loading the right bacteria in the gut, you can actually amplify what's called crosstalk. Mm-hmm. Crosstalk is when bacteria talk to the mitochondria and make them work better. And so you can actually take fasting and make it much stronger and have to do it much, much less. And so it's a way of really aging much better and doing it in a real world sense. So that's kind of a long-winded step through the book. And then one of the really key things you mentioned, just to ad lib on this for a second, was sprinting. Mm-hmm. And this is under the umbrella of what I call the integrated interval. So the problem over the long term with working out is that it doesn't work out that well for most people over time. And there's a lot of reasons why, but the biggest reason is that they don't make their living being fit. That's the biggest reason. It's sort of a little bit like trying to keep your teeth clean by only going to the dentist 3 times a week. You know, I mean, it could kind of work, but it's not going to really work long term. The integrated interval is a way to bring in short, intense bursts across every day, 6, 7 days a week. And what that does is that is far more effective at keeping the body young. And at the top of the list is sprinting. And sprinting is it's the only exercise tied to survival. And the body has a way of rewarding you based on survival points, let's call it. Sprinting, it just keeps the body young like nothing else, because essentially kids and teenagers all sprint. Like every single day, kids and teenagers sprint. You know, you go up to your girlfriend, you do that. Next thing you know, you're sprinting away. It's kind of normal. And somewhere as an adult, you stop doing that. So just adding back in the things you did when you were a kid has tremendous power to keep you young. So
I could not agree more. And the thing is too, it's what I'm finding, and what I love about your protocol, and also I listened to you on Ben Greenfield's podcast. One of the things that Ben is talking a lot about, and so that the listener here will get this, is that a lot of these things, we can have such big impacts on our bodies, just like you described, without these just soul crushing workouts, without these diets that are just going to that kill us. And I do want to talk a little bit more about fasting, and in particular to make sure I'm doing this right, because one of the things I do intermittent fasting 6 to 7 days a week, and since I've implemented the 2-day core eating protocol from the Immunity Code, I want to talk to you about making sure I'm doing that properly. But I will also say, firsthand experience. Now I'm 46, so it's, one of the reasons why I thought I was probably getting up and going to the bathroom a lot is because I'm 46. And also, I have really started to focus on nasal breathing as opposed to breathing through my mouth. I've had allergies my whole life. And so I just thought, well, that's just not an option for me until I started really focusing on it, doing my box breathing through my nose and that sort of thing. And I can tell you, I sleep throughout the entire night. I mean, I might get up, and pee once. It has been such a dramatic change. And then here is the real big one, Joel Greene, that I want to say thank you for bringing this book to the world and thus bringing it into my life, is that I had hit that plateau of body fat. And the older you get, the harder it is to shed, the body fat. Now I did start doing more resistance training to add the lean body mass, but still I was just in this holding pattern. I implemented the 2-day core eating protocol, 3 weeks, 3 points off my body fat. And for the listener, if you've ever measured body fat, that's huge. Losing body fat percentage is a totally different ball game than losing just pounds. And you saw this early on, right? I mean, I know you went from like 239 or 259 back in the day. You dropped, once you really started understanding this, and then you got down to like, I want to say 6 or 7% body fat. It was on one of your videos or an interview you had said previously. So talk to the listener now about, let's zero in on body fat a little bit, about why this is such an important metric because most people obsess over their scale, right? They'll sit there and whatever I weigh, if it's less, okay, I'm doing well. But it's not just about the weight loss, because that can also damage the fat cells like you talked about. Why is body fat so important, and what's going on that's making the body leaner as a result of adopting these practices?
Yeah. So the old understanding of body fat, kind of still widely circulated, oddly, is that body fat is just stored energy and you just got to burn it. That's all you got to do.
Right.
That's a mythology. That's nothing. There's no bearing on what's really true. None whatsoever. Body fat is an extremely complex system. That's the best way to describe it. And just kind of an aside, when I was writing the book, I really struggled for a month or two, just trying to figure out what to call body fat, because the more you dig into it, it's so fantastically complex as a system that we don't really have an easy reference for it. There isn't anything that readily comes to mind. So the easiest thing to describe it is that it's a system and it has multiple configurations, and that some of those system configurations, system config, can be extremely detrimental to health and aging. Like, not only do they promote body fat and make it very difficult to lose body fat, but some of those system configs can really accelerate the aging process. And there's even scientific names for these configurations. One of them is called the secretory associated senescent phenotype, SASP. I talked about in the book. Mm-hmm. It's configuration. So the thing to understand about body fat is that it's complex, and that it has a massive, massive say-so over not just how you look, but how you age and many other things in the body, how you recover, inflammation, all these things. So body fat's extremely critical. The problem that we have with body fat is that there has never existed an accurate understanding and accurate way of dealing with what it really is. It is a system that does multiple things. It stores energy, of course, we all get that, but it does a lot of other things. It's also a stress buffer for different types of cytotoxic cellular stress. It's an endocrine organ. It is very much a mediator of the immune system. And so it does a lot of things. A key takeaway from the immunity code that the reader walks away with is to understand that immune mechanisms actually control body fat. So it's dominated by macrophages and signals from macrophages and other immune cells. And they ultimately dictate whether or not you're going to be able to drop body fat or not. Because when you have what you see in obesity and very often with chronic weight cyclers is you see inflamed fat, not just fat, but you see that the system that holds your fat in place, the extracellular matrix, the exoskeleton, is inflamed. And it's not just inflamed, but the types of collagen fibers that are in that extracellular matrix, if you have been a chronic dieter over the years, you've done multiple cycles of weight cycling, you have unknowingly loaded very specific types of fibers into that support structure that surrounds your fat. And those types of fibers, they can be cancer promoters. They are like inflammatory beacons. They stiffen up the structure itself. They make it very difficult to lose body fat. So body fat has to come into 2020. It has to come into this new era that we're in terms of our understanding of how it works. And even today, when I look around, I just see the dumbest, most pedantic and just outdated ideas about body fat that, well, it's just eat more of this, just do more of that. I'm sorry to say, it's not that way. It's extremely complex. And the most important thing to understand about body fat, single most important thing, is that once you lose it, you have just begun to solve the problem. There is an entirely new consideration. You can call it the fat loss paradox. You can call it the weight reduced state. You can call it the post-fat loss phase, whatever you want to call it. Very real. And a bunch of science supports that an entirely different set of genes, proteins, collagen fibers, and mechanical processes take over once you've dropped the fat and ultimately decide whether or not it's going to stay off. And this happens in a period roughly 4 to 6 months post-fat loss. So this is an entirely new area of focus. Never been talked about anywhere. The only place that I know of that even has anything for it is in my own immune-centric fat loss course, which was designed specifically for that. And so basically, until we get real about what's really going on, most people will never solve the problem. The only solution really so far that's been provided is to just make your living being fit, because then in that case, you have all this time to overcome the inertia that you're working up against. So that's really a change in the way that we think of body fat and how we go about tackling it. And it's very important foundationally to really get that, because if you don't, what you're going to be doomed to what happens to everybody. You try a diet, you thought it was the diet, you lost some weight. It was probably the fact you changed the diet more than anything else. A year or two goes by, you regain the weight, you try a different diet, and then what's going on is over time, you're making the extracellular matrix stiffer. It's getting more and more stiff because you're injuring it at a cellular level. The immune system's kicking in. It's just like scar tissue. Take scar tissue and just keep scratching on that one area, and it's going to get very, very hard over time. Okay, same thing's happening. So a completely different way to think about body fat.
What is someone like me, 46, active? What is is there a universal number that I should target for my body fat percentage?
I don't know that there is. Low is good. Obviously, in that 10 to 12 range is fantastic. If you can, it's very difficult. We have to change our expectations. So one thing to understand is that we have this mythology that we've all bought into, and it's a mythology. It's that if I get my best shape ever, problem solved, problem done. Okay. I have been in my best shape many, many times in my life. Many times I've been, ready to go on a fitness commercial and film the ab thing. I've been there many times. It has nothing to do with anything. It means nothing. What matters most is your average. That's what matters. And keeping your average within a given range is really what matters. Our body fat's always going to fluctuate up and down, but if you can keep it in a 5-pound average, somewhere in that 10 to 12, 13, 14% range, that's sort of ideal.
Yeah. And I can say that, whenever you start to focus in on this, a lot of people will hear that and think that, they've gone to the doctor. I'll never forget one time, Joel, this was a few years back, and I thought I was in pretty good shape. I mean, I say a few years, it's at least 10 years ago. And my body fat percentage was 24%. And I mean, I told my physician, this cannot be right. No way. This is ridiculous. There's no way. And so a lot of people will hear that and they'll be like, you're kidding me, Joel, 12 to 14%. But if you do the things that are discussed in this book and just the science behind it that you apply, you do it in a way that you're not miserable too. That's one of the things I like about it. And I want to talk about, backing away from the body fat back into the gut. I had never heard, and I know you get this a lot, so sorry that this isn't going to be much different, but HMOs are something that I'm going to credit you for bringing to the forefront, probably at a mass scale, greater than anyone else. Talk to the audience about, and I just had Bo Berman on. I think his episode is running right now, of Layer Origin Nutrition, who actually manufactures HMOs. Talk about HMOs, what they are and why they are so important to feeding that and repairing the lining of the gut.
Yeah, the immunity code introduced to the public at large human milk oligosaccharides, and they really weren't known by anybody prior to that, like maybe very, very small science circles, but they were substances I'd been using here and there. I think back in 2018 I put Mark Bell on HMOs and it cured his lactose intolerance problem. Basically, they are carbohydrates. They are sugars that are found in mother's milk. And we think, well, carbs are bad, sugars are bad. But the thing to understand is that there is an entire domain that is what you would call programmatic in nature, works like computer programming, that has to do with what are called glycans or sugar proteins, meaning that when you find carbohydrates bound to proteins, they work like computer programs in the body. And it's an entire domain. I actually had to leave it out of the book because I started to do a chapter on it. And then it was like, I have to write an entire book on this, so I can't. So, but human milk oligosaccharides are essentially, they are glycoproteins. They are sugars that are bound to proteins, and they're very functional, extremely functional to establishing the immunity, the immune system in the human gut. So as an infant, you get them in mother's milk. And you just also happen at the same time to get your first dose of bacteria, which is bifidobacteria. So you get them at the same time when you're an infant. And both of these things, the human milk oligosaccharides and bifidobacteria, help to get the human immune system kickstarted in the gut. And they work on a number of different levels, but they're very, very synergistic. So the HMOs were really part of a protocol that's in the immunity code where it's very complex, actually. You're hitting a lot of things at once, but the simple answer is that all at once, you're spinning up Akkermansia and you're spinning up bifidobacteria, which is essentially jumpstarting the gut's immune system all over again. It's like kind of giving it taking it to the cleaner, so to speak. It's like taking your car to the car wash. It's getting all sparkly and new, so to speak. And that has profound effects on a number of parameters in the body. For example, the HMOs, they act as decoys in the immune system. So they help things like adhesion on the epithelium inside the gut. They do a lot of things, but they really do their job best with other bacteria, particularly bifidobacteria and Akkermansia. And so what the immunity code is essentially a system where it all kind of works together. And so you're doing these dietary protocols, you're taking the HMOs, you're doing other things all at once. And what we're doing is fast tracking the gut that we find in people that live the longest and are the leanest and are the healthiest. And that's the kind of the amazing thing, is it's quite hackable. Yeah. Very hackable. And I don't say that lightly. Like I say that having done it. And back in 2006, I saw what it did for me. And it was mind-boggling. Yeah. And while you're talking here, I'm trying to find, there's actually I have the original body fat PDF from the place I went to. And so if I can find it, I'll pull it up and show it.
Well, and I've got to ask you a quick question. Has the cells of the immunity code shot through the roof during the era of COVID? Have you seen a spike in cells?
Oh my gosh, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
it exploded. It really did. Yeah. I've got a new book coming out, which is going to be based on the 2-day core pattern in the immunity code. And I'm trying to put in a good 2 hours every morning writing on it. And I was just this morning, kind of just thinking about the last couple of years. The book was written prior to COVID, but it was kind of perfectly timed, and it's just really been incredible. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the new one does, which is much less scientific, but easier to read. So
Well,
we'll
I'm glad to hear that, because, and I don't want to become the angry podcast host of the get off my lawn, because I really could get frustrated talking about the fact that more of this stuff has not been brought to the fore during this time. The things that you're writing about, the control that we have to do these protocols to protect our bodies, to protect our health, that you just really aren't getting enough attention. So it really is good to hear that because I didn't buy your book because because of COVID. I bought it because I have a functioning brain that says I need to take care of myself, and I want to be healthy in old age, and so that's why I bought it. So again, it goes back to kind of where this conversation started. A lot of the things that you and I consider quote unquote common sense, I just wish more people would adopt and realize how much control they have. And then you mentioned something there that I'm glad to hear, that there's going to be a whole separate book on the 2-day core, you're saying. I think that's phenomenal. So let's get into that, because I have some specific questions for the way I'm doing the 2-day core, that I think that if someone's either done it, maybe they've got the same question. So first of all, you describe what the 2-day core eating protocol is, and then I want to ask you some questions about how I've implemented it. Am I doing it right? And recommendations that you would have for me personally. So with that, talk to us a little bit about it in depth.
Yeah, so the 2-day core, I would call the world's first post 2020 way of eating. That's what I would call it. It's a rethink. It's a rethink of this idea of health and eating, and it's the first way of eating to factor in everything that should have been factored in from the beginning. So, let's make a list. If we really want to achieve lasting health, we have to take the gut into account. In fact, you can reverse engineer really what the human body needs dietarily just by looking at the bacteria in the gut that confer health. If you go and look at Lakermansia mucinosa, what's it take to feed that? What does it take to feed these species of bifidobacteria? Because we know that we're going to get, by and large, the majority of the bell curve are very healthy when they have these bacteria in the gut. You can reverse engineer what the body needs just by going, well, bifidobacteria that feeds on this, this, and this.
Right.
So we need to keep the gut tuned. We need to age slower. We need to age better, and that is something that has to be factored into the equation. We need to take into account that fasting is the only proven way to extend lifespan. We need to take that into account. We need to get practical. We need to take into account what people actually do, not platitudes of fantasy, but what they really, really do. And when you look at what people do, there is a biological imperative wired into all mammals called ad libitum eating. It just means you want to eat whatever the hell you want to eat. You're going to do it from time to time. That's what people do, and there's no getting around it. So once you consider factoring the gut into the equation, that changes everything, because the gut bacteria are rapidly modifiable. Like a single meal, and it's easy to prove. Go eat 4,000 or 5,000 calories of junk. Go eat 4,000 calories of Snicker bars and fried food, just terrible food, and watch your gas afterwards. Yeah. It's going to be noxious. It's going to be horrible. Right. Well, it's a direct reflection of you have fed the dysbiotic bacteria. So these species of bacteria, either good or bad, spin up meal to meal very fast. So taking into account ad libitum eating changes how you think about what needs to go into the way of eating. Then we need to take into account the modern world, and that people have basically no time for them, very often have periods of no time. And one of the biggest things, anybody who does what I do, you'll run into are people who are well, I just, I've had a rough 2 months, just so many things going on, and just, I haven't, and they're very apologetic if you give them a meal plan because they can't keep on to it. Okay. Well, that's reflects the symptom of the disease is that the plan never survives the first meal. So people need a way to eat that doesn't take time. They need something they can do on the go. And if you don't give them that, you're going to fail. And the reason is until you have been in a position where you're working 14, 15-hour days, doing other things other than, being fit, it's very difficult to understand what pressures assault you. So we need to take that into account. So all these things need to be factored into the equation. And then once you factor those into the equation, we come back towards our goal, which is, okay, over time, we need to age better. So how are we going to get there? Well, one of the ways we get there is that we make insulin work better, but at the same time, we make less insulin.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we want insulin, we want to make less insulin overall, but when we do make it, we want to be more efficient with it. So we have to factor that in. All this stuff has to be factored in. And that's what the 2-day core has done. It's taken all of these things and made them into one way of eating. So the basic concept is super, super simple. It's that you're rotating 2 different patterns in one day versus the next. On day 1, it looks a little more plant-based. So you're essentially just adding in to your diet in specific sequences, things that are more kind of like things that feed the right bacteria in the gut on the first day. And so those would be things in the morning that are, fruits like dark fruits and phenol fruits, things like that. Could be grapefruit, could be things like that. You want to try at lunch to add in a little bit of functional starches to your diet. So things like certain types of beans, lentils, potatoes, things like that. Not in large amounts, just make sure they're there. Dinners would be things where you're making sure you're adding in more kind of cruciferous, crunchy, classic vegetable things. So very just healthy, very, very, very balanced, very healthy. But what's important is the sequence. So we're timing things in such a way that we're actually not really trying to feed you as much as we are the gut. So we're feeding these fruits in the morning, more dense starches in the afternoon, more dense kind of cruciferous stuff in the evening. Doing it in small amounts, but making sure that they're there in the picture. And there's a lot of variety you can do. The main thing really is just that you're making sure those things are in the picture. What that's doing is the day before a fast, you're ramping up key species of bifidobacteria. And what you're doing by that is creating crosstalk. You're creating an amplified version of a fast. And the way you're doing it is setting it up the day before. You're actually mimicking what happened historically, ancestrally. The first thing I'm going to eat if I'm starving is if, like we killed a water buffalo, I'm eating the water buffalo. Okay. Right. The last thing I'm going to do is dig up roots. Okay. But I will dig up roots if there's nothing else to eat. And so these fibers in a starved state, it turns out that there are these adaptions that happen to our body. It potentiates aging better because you're creating crosstalk between bacteria in the gut and the mitochondria. And what happens is you're replicating the benefits of fasting and exercise without doing it. So then as you come into the second day, you begin by fasting. The thing that universally people will tell you who've done it is like the signals that you're fasting are much stronger, notably hunger. Hunger is much stronger. Like you talk to people who just do a regular fast, and they're like, I'm good, I'm not really hungry. You talk to people doing the amplified fast from the 2-day core, like, I'm really hungry.
Yeah.
Well, what you're doing is so many of these are markers. Like ghrelin is one of your major potentiators here for growth hormone and all these other things that are going on. So these signals are much stronger. And so you don't have to fast as long is kind of the thing. Like you really don't have to have like these 8, 9, 10, 12-hour fat periods where you're just going without food. The reason for that is completely missing is that a lot of the proponents of fasting haven't done it long enough to know what's going to happen. They don't have the benefit of, they don't just haven't done it. You haven't done it 5 years, haven't done it 10 years. Right. What you'll find when you get to that place is like, there's a downside and it's pretty significant. I hear it all the time from people who did that. They're coming on year 4 and 5 now, and they're like, oh my gosh, now I can't eat anything, and I have no hunger, all these problems. So you don't want those problems long-term. You want something that can be sustained. So the way to get there is by amplifying the benefits of fasting, minimizing the downside. Then from there, you're moving into a keto pattern the rest of the day. And so what you're doing is you are keeping down insulin production 3 days a week. You're not making that much insulin. And then you're coming in at insulin from two sides of the equation. On the one side, on one day, you're taking in foods that sensitize insulin, things that very specific types of starches really help insulin work better. And then the following day, you're taking in foods that potentiate the helper hormones, the other hormones that surround insulin, adiponectin, GLP-1, GIP, the incretins, all these different hormones that make insulin work better. So you're really coming at insulin from two sides of the equation. And that's the basic foundation of it. And the best part about it is it's really just designed to do on the run. Like you could literally do the whole thing. Like I'm not kidding, this is a real thing. I've done it out of convenience stores for years. Like literally just walk into like an AM PM and I'm set for the day, and it's healthy. It's actually healthier.
Yeah.
If you can believe that, because it's not just where you're getting the food. It's the sequence, the timing, what you're doing with it. And so that's the 2-day core. And of course I have to write a book on this, but in its simplest form, it's fruits and fibers kind of one day and fasting the next.
So, and that's one of the things that I probably kind of messed it up a little bit, Joel, in that I would back off my feeding window, or up my feeding window, I guess you would say, a little bit, in that what I've done just to maintain, I can probably, just because I'm a creature of habit, I have made it so that, like, instead of going till 1 o'clock to open my feeding window, excuse me, I'll start eating at 11. So I'll eat my dark berries and some walnuts at 11. And so my timing's a little off. That way I'm maintaining 14 to 16 hours of fasting, even during the 2-day protocol. Am I messing things up? Am I just doing something that I don't even really have to do?
Yeah. Yeah. So what you want to do is there is, we live in this simplified world that oversimplifies things. Yeah. And so currently today's idea is that, longer fasting windows are good, and that frequent meals are bad. And that's not true. There's good and bad to both. There are benefits to frequent feeding. There's benefits to eating breakfast. In fact, there's good research that shows overall breakfast eaters are just leaner than people who don't eat breakfast if you measure it over time long enough. So what the pattern's doing is giving you both. You're on day one, you're getting frequent eating in, you're getting breakfast eating in. The timing is important because getting breakfast in periodically is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. What you see with people that really get into fasting, I call it the map of how things really work, is you see a sine wave where the front part of the sine wave is all benefits, but the back end, that they get into years later, is all negatives and downside. So you want to mitigate those things. The way you do that is that 2-day pattern, where one of those days, day one, fruit fiber day, you're eating more kind of a regular eating schedule. It's very beneficial long term. Very beneficial to be getting in breakfast and frequent feeding. Whereas the second day, you're not eating as frequent. You're getting more fasting in. That has benefits too. So you're getting the best of both.
Okay. All right. Well, good. Now that I have your permission to fully do that, that makes me not feel, because you get in this rut where your mind is like, oh my God, I'm not allowed to have breakfast. I just can't do that. I'm going to screw all the autophagy that I'm trying to achieve. I can't have, which is another thing that I like, is that and maybe you want to go into this a little bit about, first of all, what autophagy is, why it is important, and how this eating protocol actually enhances that, because that was one of the things that was pretty eye-opening to me. I thought, to be honest with you, I didn't even think I was doing that good of a job, because the only way that you're going to reach real autophagy is to not eat for like 36 hours, and then, somewhere around hour 20, 24, then you're really going to start cleaning the cells up. But talk a little bit about what it is, why it's important, and why you can actually enhance it while eating at the same time.
Yeah, so autophagy means self-eating. Autophagy is a distinct cellular state where, think of it as a ship. And on that ship, we have deck chairs, and we have, beach balls, and we have all this stuff. And, after a while, the deck is getting kind of messy. It's like stuff everywhere. And every once in a while, it's a really good idea to clean the deck up. And the way you do it is just toss it all into the furnace and use it, to propel the ship. Okay. That's kind of the idea of autophagy. The first thing to understand is that across your whole body, autophagy it's not uniform. Like cells are always going in and out of autophagy. Okay. And that there's also, what you call autophagy, there's different ways to get there. There's what's called the ubiquitin proteasome pathway, where you degrade proteins. There's autophagic flux. So there's different types of autophagy. There's mitophagy, there's pexophagy. So there is not a hard and fast to it, but generally speaking, autophagy has a natural home. It's during sleep. That's when it happens. So the thing to understand about it is that in its rightful place, it's diurnal, it's circadian in its rhythms. Okay. And the way it works is when you're young, you go to bed and you're fasting. That's why it's called break fast. You break the fast with breakfast. But while you're asleep, you're fasting, you're not eating, you're having this long period without food. And so cells basically go into autophagy, and it's kind of, think of it as a repair mode. Okay. And generally speaking, that's a good thing. It cannot be a good thing. It can be a bad thing too. So too much autophagy is not good. Too much autophagy, if you think about it, the way that we repair is through growth. Growth is how things get repaired. So autophagy is the opposite of growth. It's when growth has ceased and stopped. And that's why it has a life extending effect. So in order to grow, the body has to, the easiest way to think of it is the body has to use up its life cycle. It has to use up its cell cycles. It has to use up resources in order to grow. In order to grow, it takes fuel, which usually requires certain pathways to work, insulin in particular. So there are benefits to growth. Growth is how we heal. It's how inflammation resolves. There are benefits to autophagy. Too much growth we call cancer. Too much autophagy can feed certain cancers. Okay, so the first thing to understand is that autophagy is a beneficial thing when it's in balance. It can be a negative thing when it's out of balance. So you want the right amount of autophagy. The best way to gauge the right amount of autophagy begins with sleep. Okay, so when sleep is really, really good, like what I tell people typically is, don't even worry about fasting. If you're not sleeping, if your sleep scores are not like, out of the park, don't even think about fasting. Okay, you want your first best fast to be sleep, and you want to get great sleep, and that's where everything happens in its rightful place. So now the argument for additional fasting, which will drive autophagy, because think about it this way: the only way we grow is when we take in food. That's how growth happens. When you don't take in food, growth ceases, and that's good. There's a life extending effect to that to a degree. So the easy way to understand it is just think feast and famine, starvation, and continuous starvation is not good. Not good at all. Like there's diseases associated to that, all kinds. We could name names, So you don't want to be starving all the time, but then continuous feasting isn't good either. But bits of both are really, really good, optimal, really good for the body. So taking the body into a periodic period where food ceases in addition to sleep is a good thing. It mimics ancestrally that we didn't always have refrigerators standing by, and we had to work a little harder to get food. And our bodies are wired in such a way that that's good. It's beneficial. And the question is how much, how often, really is the question. And there may not be a perfect answer to that, but what we can probably say is probabilistically more true is that some is good, too much is bad. And that's true of feasting, it's true of fasting, it's true of both. You want some, you just don't want too much. So the 2-day core gives you some. You get some fasting in, but it's amplified. Yeah. We're using very innovative meal patterns to feed bacteria, to amplify fasting. And then we're using modern science. We're using small molecules, things like berberine, things like pterostilbene, things like apigetin, rutin, naringin in the morning on the second day to amplify the benefits of fasting. And so we're really taking modern science, applying it to the idea of starvation and putting it in the real world we have to live in to make it livable. And that's the basic idea.
So let's talk a little bit about the longevity piece of the mix. I want to park on that a little bit for the listener to understand those things that can truly enhance longevity. And this is probably going to show just my lack of learnedness on the subject. But so if I'm measuring my telomeres, if I do that testing, is there ever a way to grow those? Are they always being reduced? And here's why I ask. I've just got this wild idea, and some study may have been done, but you're hearing more and more, like with David Sinclair's work and Peter Attia's and your work, there's just more research that's coming to the fore about actually treating age, or aging rather, as a quote unquote disease, right? We're actually, so have there been any markers to determine if you could truly see some reversal by, as opposed to just stopping? Have you seen any of those? And then with that, just kind of as a tee up, go into some of the things that truly have an impact on that functional aging protocol, that longevity, so that when we reach 75, 80, that we're still able to move, we're able to do squats, we're able to do some sprints. Go into some of the actual longevity protocols.
Yeah, so we can make it work in a petri dish. Like the basic thing with telomeres is that it is now possible to probably add about 12 to 14 years of life, but they can't get it to work in the human body. They can do it in a petri dish.
Wow.
Probably coming here, maybe within who knows how long. It might even be here to a select few. We don't really know.
Yeah.
But for the populace at large, it's something that's off in the future. That being said, that's only one aspect of aging. One of the ideas presented in the immunity code, which fits in line with what you said, is that there's a way of looking at aging as an imbalance of the immune system. There's theories on this. It's called remodeling theory, network theory. And the idea is that aging essentially mimics an injury that's system-wide. And the immune system is working overtime trying to recover from this injury, and it can't keep up. Mm-hmm. And so assets and resources that normally, their job normally is to, you get a owie, it gets inflamed, the inflammation resolves, and it's done. And then those assets can go back to their normal state. Things like macrophages, they don't have to stay in the fireman mode, in the SWAT team mode. They can go back to just kind of a resting state, so to speak. What happens is all these assets get oversubscribed in the aging process. And so think of it as a fire. They're always trying to put out. And so as a result, you have this system-wide milieu of inflammatory signals and mediators, and it affects everything, notably the blood. And so what happens is, as your blood becomes an inflammatory medium, you see very pronounced changes in the rate of aging. Things like you can't recover from exercise, you just stay sore. We begin to see massive changes in the mitochondria density in the musculature, so you're not making energy really anymore. All these problems, and we can kind of look at those as sort of really this problem the immune system is trying to fix, and it can't get over it. It can't keep up. And so when you look at aging from that perspective, it's not so much about telomeres; it's more about really a distinct sort of set of conditions. Mm-hmm. And the equation becomes, well, can we flip the switch? Can we change some of these conditions? In other words, let's take organ by organ. Body fat. We see that with age, body fat gets really inflamed, and that inflammation sort of works virally. It tends to spread, and then we see that muscle tends to lose its density mitochondria, and it tends to store more body fat, and then these work back and forth with your body fat. So if we can change out the density, the population density of inflammatory immune cells, inflammatory macrophages, from the inflammatory to the non-inflammatory, we can get a leg up on this. And so there's a concept I put forth in the immunity code called steering macrophages, and you're starting to see it get picked up on. I saw a guy on Asprey's podcast who kind of picked up on it the other day, talking about controlling interleukin-6 and all these things that were kind of put out in the immunity code. And so we have a kind of a different way of approaching the aging process, where telomeres probably will get there, but it's really not that tangible right now. But something that is very tangible, very doable, is to begin to affect immune mechanisms. So if we can learn how to steer and control macrophages in key body compartments, that is certainly a big piece of the equation. And then it becomes, really a tissue by tissue proposition. And that's kind of like that's kind of where I left it in the book, was there. The other thing you have to think about too is organs. So one of the things that sinks the ship is organs just quit. Okay, that could be the kidneys, that could be the heart, that could be the liver. And so we can think of aging sort of, as a cellular process, but it's also important to think of it as an organ-centric process. And as the utility or the shelf life of these organs begins to go downhill, you're looking at an expiration date, and maybe it's your liver, or maybe it's your kidneys. When your kidneys quit, you're on borrowed time. So keeping the organs functioning at a very high level also is a function of the immune system. So immune mechanisms, things like macrophages, they tend to have a de facto dominating say-so over the homeostasis or the state of most organs. They kind of run the show kind of at a decision level. And so all this just comes back to, something that the average person can get their arms around is if you can begin to learn how to steer and control macrophages and key signals like interleukins, you are putting your hand on the anti-aging wheel.
Yeah, that was one of the most beneficial, for me, inflammation was something that obviously I knew what it was, I knew what was going on, but whenever your red guy, blue guy illustration really helped me in how to direct and how to kind of again, I think in terms of metaphors and illustrations, it's like, well, okay, peace through strength. You have that big immunity buildup, you have those red guys at the ready, but just hope you don't have to use them. Use the blue guys more, just kind of come in for the nice cleanup. And, Joel, do you think that part of what, so I have some coaching clients that I give them books like yours because I think when we start to just think more about what is happening, we're less likely to eat the bad things. And that's to the listener out there, if you implement this protocol, Joel gives you some tips and tricks so that you can eat at Libertum or at Liberties, because what's going to happen, the wheels are going to come off and you're going to stuff your mouth full of crap at some point. But he shows you ways that you can prepare for that and recover quickly from that and maintain the insulin levels, right, while the wheels are coming off. But I have found, not that I've been doing this for a long time as far as watching my health and what I eat, but the more I've gotten into this and understanding the difference in feeding, and directing the different things, that I don't really want to eat the bad things. I don't know. Do you think that's more neurological, or is it just the way my body feels?
No, it's the gut. And so what happens is, it happens very fast too. Done many times. When you change the gut out and you get the commensals in the gut, the bacteria that are commensurate with health, completely rewires your cravings completely. You just don't. And what happens is when you have those things again, you get nauseated. You feel nausea. So that is a really provable, immediate kind of thing that you can see. And what's going on is that essentially you've been hacked. That's what's going on. We're all hacked in the wrong direction. And it's just that the dysbiotic bacteria have hacked our vagus nerve. And, you come home at night, you need to de-stress, you just gotta have some carbohydrates, you feel better. Well, it's them. It's the dysbiotic bacteria. They're getting you to eat what feeds them while you sleep, and they're really good at doing it. And you think it's your cravings, and you sprinkle pixie dust over your cravings and say all this mumbo jumbo, and I will not, and I'm going to get it all out of the house. It was never you to begin with, and it's such an easy problem to solve. It's just changing out the bacteria in your gut, and then once you do that, you can actually drive cravings the opposite direction. Many times I have created these very strong cravings for foods like salads, things that feed the commensal bacteria, and I'm just craving those things, and it's not me. Again, it's them. So we get into these concepts of emotional eating and all this stuff, and there's truth to that, but equally true is that there are biochemical sort of mediators or metabolites from the bacteria in our gut that drive our cravings and drive our satisfaction with food far more than we think.
Yeah, I used to have a major sweet tooth, and but I can barely even, especially like a cake or something and I love pastries and that sort of thing, but I know that it's not going to feel good. It's like, okay, and do you drink at all by chance? What is your take on alcohol from a health standpoint? Not scruples, but just from a health standpoint.
It's poison. Okay. It's a metabolic poison. Yeah.
Same.
Acetaldehyde, which alcohol converts to, is a poison, and it has to be clear. I really don't anymore, and it's not that I don't enjoy a drink here and there, but the older you get, it's just not worth it. have no desire whatsoever. You know, I just like feeling good, and it's not worth it to me to feel good for an hour and a half, and then I just feel, you know, you get really. I just turned 57, so you get really protective of your age and your rate of aging.
Yeah. So that's, and you took the words out of my mouth. That there's a parallel that happened whenever I quit drinking, because the reason I quit drinking was, one, I wanted to slow the aging process. I didn't like feeling lethargic, and I just, you know, you'll read that that one article in Men's Health or something that says a glass of wine or whatever, but you never read that not drinking is bad for you. So I took the simple approach, and I just cut it out completely, abrogated it, and now the thought of having what was my preferred drink of choice back in the day, Scotch on the rocks, I go, well, the damage that could happen, it's not worth it. And that has translated over into foods. It's now, I look at things that look amazing, but one, if I know that they've been made with poisons and they've got MSG and they've got all these other ides at the end of the ingredients, I'm like, no, my body doesn't crave it. And the cool thing is, you can still have some pleasures. Like, I love really good high cacao content chocolate now, you know, really, in which there is a benefit, right? So it's been amazing. I'm glad to hear you say that can happen for others, because I'm telling you, listener, understand, if you adopt these protocols, your body and the bacterium will start to crave those things that it needs, the nourishing things. Now, before we end this, and I want to respect your time, Joel. I mean, dude, you just turned 57. You do look amazing. So let's talk about kind of your physical protocol after, you know, you said it. I mean, 40 years at this, studying and at a granular level, knowing what works. You've tried everything that doesn't, and you found this balance. Kind of, what does your protocol look like? And then specifically, I want to ask you this, because I know that you're very efficient. I think you have, and correct me if I'm wrong here, you have like one real quote unquote workout per week. I mean, you really have optimized this, but I want to know how you're maintaining your cardiovascular health. Because again, it's kind of like my whole fasting thing I told you about earlier. Whenever Ben Greenfield kind of gave me permission to back off my soul crushing workouts, which used to be 7 days a week, 1,000-calorie burn workout every morning. When I found out I was really hurting myself as opposed to helping myself, it was still hard to kind of come away from that. And then learning your protocols and how efficient they are, I still had those withdrawals. Like, wait a minute, no, what if the saber-toothed tiger does come along and I can't run, you know, to save myself? I'm out of shape. So what does your protocol look like, and help cure me of my obsessive need to probably work out more than I should?
Well, first of all, there's this idea of using the muscles up, and that the muscles are, you know, not a tire with unlimited tread on them. They have a shelf life.
Yep.
And so they can make an argument that there is sort of an optimal range of using them, optimal rate of using them. Too little is not good. Too much may not be good. I'm kind of a proponent of that idea, and I wrote about this in the book. I was 27. I was in a gym in '92, and I was just, I was doing these massive volume sets, and I was doing some tricep push downs. I just was like, it's a lot of wear and tear that I'm doing, like a lot of wear and tear. And I'm just kind of looking forward. I could already feel, my joints were already kind of a little sore from the wear and tear. And so, I wish I could work out more and love to. And I've just, since 2006, I've had this season that's been nonstop. One, I had this software that I was doing, and don't ever do a software. Just don't, because and you talk to people that have done one, they all tell you the same thing. They're like, yeah, because you never sleep. You're up, dealing with programmers, and it's very stressful and tons of money and all that stuff. And so that was a good 10 years of my life. And then since the immunity code has come out, it's been nonstop, 14 hours a day, building systems that are ultimately really designed to fulfill everything in the platform. The immunity code was a platform, and then all of these different things that are coming out are things to fulfill it. So I've been working nonstop. So I wish I could work out more, but my schedule doesn't permit it right now. So really, it's right out of the book in terms of I do the integrated interval. That is the most important thing. Way more important than working out is the integrated interval. And that's you can populate it with, a lot of different things. The thing that I most often try and populate it with is sprinting. And what you'll find with sprinting is that, particularly, and I'm not on TRT, so at this, or any of that stuff. So at this age, if you get off the bicycle, getting back on it's very hard. You take a week off, it can take you 3 weeks to get it back. Very, very hard. So sprinting is number one. And then it's just a matter of integrating into the day stuff. So that could be 50 push-ups, it could be a handstand, it could be the one thing that is always in there, no matter what, always, are my bedtime yoga flows. Those are always in there. I never not do those. And the reason for that is mobility and flexibility and circulation are way more important than muscle size. Like as you're aging, like you lose your circulation, you can't gain muscle. So keeping the body very mobile and supple and flexible is kind of number one. I always do those. And then it's whatever I can integrate into my day. And then I do one classic bodybuilding workout like a week typically. I mean, there's a lot of other stuff in it, but like I'll go and I'll do bench presses and I'll do triceps, curl wall, kind of beach muscles workout. I don't do that much volume with it. It's not a very long workout. But that's kind of what it looks like. And again, it's not what I'd like to do. I'd like to do it a lot more. I just don't have the time to be.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that you said there that I have incorporated, that I have really been telling friends and anyone who will listen to do, is those micro workouts. Like I'm upstairs in my home office, and downstairs is where I work out in my garage. And I'll go down after you and I finish this, and I keep a tally mark. I'll do 10 pull-ups, 5 kettlebell swings, and then 10 slow squats with the kettlebell. Fully clothed. I don't have to change clothes, and that's it. And I'll try. My goal is to get to 100 pull-ups throughout the day. And I'll tell you this too, Joel, that I used to do what I'd call the Vitruvian Circuit, which was a 10-minute EMOM of 5 pull-ups, 5 kettlebell swings, and 10 push-ups. If I do that now, I feel a lot more inflammation. Whereas if I just do this steady state throughout the day, doing my pull-ups, kettlebell swings, and squats, I don't have the inflammation. I'm not as sore. My joints are fine. And yet I'm still staying lean. I'm staying, I've really seen a benefit. And I think that that's one of the things, again, that the immunity code goes into, just the lifestyle that you have brought to the fore, is that you don't have to just have this rigid, it fits into everyday life. And you can be in a cubicle and crush, 20 air squats, right? I mean, it can truly be. And then another thing that I like about it too, that you've kind of touched on, is this whole idea of ancestral living. The deck is stacked against us now. I was watching a commercial of this. It was an Arby's commercial, and the guy with the deep voice came on and was offering me probably about a 1,500 calorie meat sandwich. I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to go slay a water buffalo or a wildebeest to get it. I just had to go sit in my air conditioning car, drive up there, or hell, I could have even had it waitered if I wanted to. So there's just no challenge to getting our calories now. So the deck is stacked against us. So understanding these things to live in this 21st century cushy world, I think it's part of the key to survival. I really do.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. This is a unique set of constraints on the human body that haven't really existed before. And we need to counter, and it's not one thing, it's a bunch of things, a bunch of little things. So the way to counter it is not by trying to do one big thing, which is that big workout 3 times a week. It's a bunch of little things.
Yeah.
So if you have a bunch of little things to counter a bunch of little things, then it's much easier to do. And, like what you're finding, just doing kind of doing it every day, just a moderate amount. The body adapts really well to that. Gets really, really strong. The fact you're doing 100 pull-ups a day is amazing. The body gets really, really strong. Replicating field work, field workers, they stay lean. Field workers stay lean and healthy in their 80s and 90s, and they're just full of energy and doing stuff. And it's because of doing stuff every day. Yeah. So we age a little bit every day, and what happens is you have to counter that every day with little things. It's a good example is the blood. as you get older, the blood just doesn't circulate like it used to, and so you tend to be inflamed just sitting. So you just need a good counter is 30 seconds of something, maybe that something is just pull-ups for, whatever, 30 seconds, 10, 15, whatever you could do.
Yeah.
This massive, massive counter to that hour of sitting that you just did. Exactly. And it didn't take any time. And so what you're doing is you're taking the inflammatory buildup, you're knocking it out that day right then and there. You're not, sitting 3 days trying to recover from a workout that, you really can't recover from anyway. So yeah, I found it, and I've seen it with a lot of people, works a lot better.
Yeah. Well, Joel, I can't really describe to you how much this has meant to me to have this time. I know that you're all over the place, man. And I'm glad the message that you're sharing it's so important. I can't wait for the new book. I hope that you will be a return visitor on the Jason Wright show, because this audience and me personally, just selfishly, I have benefited so much. It's been such an honor to talk to you. Before I let you go, though, I got to give you the opportunity to talk about deep nutrition, talk about, anything else where people can find you, and any parting words you might have for this audience.
Yeah. So Amazon, you can find the book, the immunity code, deepnutrition.com, V like Victor, E like Edward, E like Edward, P like Paul, nutrition, one word. You can find the immune-centric fat loss course, which is just doing fantastic. And we'll have a lot of goodies coming out here very, very soon. A lot of free stuff. Really, I'm just building a platform where the average person can kind of come from where I came from, which is, working a full-time gig and, skipping you the 30, 40 years of what ain't gonna work, even though a bunch of people telling you it's gonna work, not gonna work. And I'm just stepping you to the front of the line and just trying to get you into start with this small thing, this next thing. And I'm just creating a platform where people can do that and begin to see things that you can really see, really measure, and then just create lasting results from. So that's what I'm building. And just, go to my Instagram, Real Joel Greene, and just stay plugged in, and you'll see a lot of stuff coming very soon. So.
Well, fantastic. Well, Joel, thank you so very much for being on. Absolutely. I'm going to do a little sign off here, and then I'll say goodbye to you properly. Hey, if you're watching this on the YouTube channel, thank you so much. I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe. And also you can listen to this on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Please leave us a 5-star rating. Thanks again to Joel Greene, the immunity code. You got to get it. This needs to be in your health protocol, your arsenal, your reference library. It is phenomenal. And with that, remember, please always endeavor to improve, always and always. I'm Jason Wright. Thanks so much for listening.